Majority Leader.
Mr. President, today the Senate will continue working to confirm more of President Biden's well-qualified judicial nominees. On Monday, I filed cloture on 5 more district court judges. We'll continue the process of confirming those judges later this morning. We'll begin with votes on 2 district court judges for the Northern District of New York, Anthony Brindisi and Elizabeth Coombe. Anthony Brindisi I know well. He's the proud son of Utica, a former member of Congress, and I work closely with him on many issues for upstate New York, particularly his hometown of Utica, where my dad was raised, so I have a particular affinity there. Excuse me. Anyway, I have a particular affinity with Utica, and Brindisi is a proud son of Utica. He's also an exceptionally qualified attorney whose legal acumen and deep care for the Mohawk Valley and all of central New York will make him an excellent addition to the Northern District. Beth Kuhn has also been a trailblazing prosecutor for her entire career in Albany and Syracuse, the first woman to become the federal criminal chief for the Northern District, and I'm proud to see her ascend to the federal bench. After we vote on these judges, we'll then vote to advance Sarah Davenport to be district court judge for the District of New Mexico, and we'll keep moving forward with the remaining judges as soon as possible. Democrats have made confirming President Biden's well-qualified judges a top priority the last few years. It'll remain a priority until our very last day in the majority. Finally, Mr. President, let me close on a bittersweet but deeply grateful note. Later this afternoon, senators will gather in the chamber to hear the farewell remarks of a beloved colleague, our dear friend, my dear friend, Debbie Stabenow of Michigan. She'll leave the Senate at the end of this year after 24 remarkable years in this chamber and many, many more in public service. But today, I don't want to start my tribute by listing off Debbie's myriad accomplishments, although they're great. Nor do I want to focus on how much all of us in the Democratic caucus love to work with her, though we certainly do. And you know, as leader, you can't do everything yourself, and I don't try. And you give jobs to different people. When you give Debbie Stabenow a job, she gets the job done. Every time I call Debbie, and it's so frequent, and I ask her to do this or do that, I know it'll get done and get done well because of her phenomenal dedication and ability and energy and drive. And she does it all with a smile on her face. She's just great. But let me begin by focusing a couple of blocks down the street from Debbie's alma mater, Michigan State University, at an old bar called the Coral Gables. There, as a college student, Debbie was a regular, working of all things as a folk singer. Yes, Debbie sang part-time to earn a little money on the side back in college. And many years later, once in the Senate, her love of folk music led her to achieve a lifelong goal of singing with Peter, Paul, and Mary, all for raising money for anti-bullying causes. She was in a little singing group. I forgot the name of the fellow. It was Debbie and, I don't remember, Debbie and Dan or something like that. She'll probably mention, I hope she mentions it on the floor when she speaks. But why do I mention this? Because for Debbie Stabenow, an elected leader with very few peers in this chamber, the first woman to represent Michigan in the U.S. Senate, politics by itself has never been the end goal. For Debbie, the end goal has always been her community and about building support for worthy causes, about being a constant presence in her hometown, on campus in Lansing, or all over the state, the kind of person who loved getting to know everyone on a first-name basis. That's always been Debbie at her core. Add to that the thirst for fairness, a love of complex problems, a knack and persistence for winning, and you get the senior senator from Michigan. Saying goodbye is heart-wrenching. Saying thank you is hardly sufficient. After 2 decades, there's no policy issue left that Debbie hasn't shaped or progressed in some meaningful way. She's authored hundreds of bills that have become law. Her work has been ahead of the curve. Look no further than her legacy on closing the gap from mental health policy. She so cared about people's mental health. She knew that the federal government hadn't stepped up the plate. It was a decade-long campaign for her. She never gave up. It didn't matter if there was a Democratic president, Republican president, Democratic majority leader, Republican majority leader. She kept at it, kept at it, kept at it. And when the time came ripe to add significant dollars to mental health on several different occasions, she did. Most recently on our major gun bill in 2022, where over $14 billion was added for mental health. That wouldn't have happened without Debbie Stabenow. She does amazing work, amazing work. Of course, her true love will always be the place she calls home. It'll always be the people of Michigan, from the rural farmers. She's relentlessly championed through the Farm Bill. I never forget her devotion to the cherry farmers and reminding us that Michigan is the biggest sweet cherry state in the country. I reminded her New York is the biggest sour cherry state in the country. Anyway, she's always fiercely protected the farmers of Michigan, to the Great Lakes, to the small town and working class and middle class families just trying to afford health care and prescription drugs. When the auto industry needed saving in a moment of crisis, Debbie came to the rescue. When hungry kids and hungry families needed someone to fight for their needs in the highest echelons of government, Debbie was their voice. There were a lot of people on the Ag Committee who didn't want to help feed children, hungry children, or give them what they needed. Debbie knew that they needed certain things as well for their row crops. She always was able to weave together a coalition that would pass the Ag Bill, help hungry children, and help the farmers. And when our caucus needed good leaders and team players to guide us and organize us and help us achieve our goals, Debbie stepped up to the plate. Just 4 years in her time into the Senate, she became the third-ranking Democrat in the caucus. When she was named caucus secretary by the late Harry Reid. And for many years, she has been an expert and skillful force as chair of the DPCC, our Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, organizing weekly lunches, providing messaging and strategy resources, and organizing our caucus's yearly retreat. At all of our Tuesday lunches, Debbie would get up and go over our strategy every Tuesday, and everybody listened and everybody followed. She'd publish a list. Who's helped us? Giving them credit and then expanding the list of who else would help us because they weren't on the list the previous week. And of course, I want to thank Debbie for her many, many years as leader of the Ag Committee and on the Farm Bill. It's a cause she dedicated herself. Together, we worked on getting help for our specialty crops, our fruits and vegetables, which Michigan and New York have so much produce from. She was a champion of this legislation, all ag legislation, and I commend her for recent work in releasing a strong bill. So to lose Debbie, I begged her to stay when she told me a year and a half ago that she wasn't going to run. Although true to her commitment, Debbie said, "Don't worry, we'll have a great new senator to take my place, and I'll make sure she wins," and she did, and now we have Alyssa Slotkin coming, who's a protege of Debbie's. She, when she makes a commitment, there it is, it gets done. Finally, what's incredible about Debbie's legacy is that things could have turned out very, very differently. In fact, Debbie's preference growing up was to serve in a different capacity, perhaps criminal justice, perhaps social work, which she studied in college. Political life may not have been in the cards at all were it not for an incident that occurred in graduate school. Because while she was studying at Michigan State, she's a Spartan, a local county commissioner announced he was shutting down the only nursing home in town that served low-income seniors. The decision lit a fire within Debbie, a deep anger at the utter callousness of the decision. What this official did was simply unfair. It was mean-spirited. So Debbie, then just 24 years old with no political experience, decided to run against him. The incumbent wasn't exactly respectable about a younger woman challenging his seat. But then she won. She won in a landslide. And of course, her goal was not to win the election, but to save the nursing home, and she did. And along the way, Debbie discovered she loved running for office because she loved people. She just has that friendly, all-embracing look, and she would meet people. She would shake hands. She'd get to know the entire town on a first-name basis. And most of all, listening to her neighbor, what her neighbors were thinking she went through as she met them. So from then on, Debbie never looked back. Thank God for that, too, because now that time has come for us to say goodbye. Debbie's mom, who instilled in her a belief in political life, who just passed away but made sure she mailed her absentee ballot while she was sick. One of her last acts was to make sure she voted. That's where Debbie got it all. She always talks glowingly about her mom. And her mom knows, we all know, that Debbie Stabenow leaves our country a better, stronger, healthier place than the day she chose to save the nursing home. So Debbie, thank you, thank you, thank you. We will miss you. I certainly will miss you. You were one of my best friends and one of my best members of the team. But we are happy for you and your family. And we know you can continue to do great things for our country and for Michigan in the years to come. Debbie, Godspeed. Godspeed.